So Mikolov, I mentioned earlier, he is not Mikolov. He is not out. He's actually going against Hatul, who beat Vardu in the elimination match for Group A. So
Shame.
Hatul, the organizer, the guy who lives and breathes Hearthstone in every which way, is going to be going up against Mikolov.
Zoo Warlock and Token Druid on both sides. However, there is a differentiation. This is an important one. Tempo Mage for Sintolol versus a Secret Subject 9 Hunter for Moyen.
Yeah, and that is really...
How do the bans work? Because there is a little bit of a wheel effect here. If you believe that you just want to go with the optimal deck ban, then you want to try to, take apart Secret Hunter, which is generally good against aggro decks. But if your opponent knows you're going to do that, they can take advantage of the exhausted, as some of these other players who've been traveling week to week, going to every single event trying to gather as many points.
And like you said, the fact that he's kind of taken a bit of a step back in terms of his grinding, he hasn't done that much. He's still qualified.
His lineup is well adjusted for the field. We're talking about how you bring an aggressive strategy to beat other aggro decks. This is something that's worked out well for Moyen. And he is a member of the practice group that we kind of talked about, the Deutsche Soccer Guild, that a lot of other players have had success.
Hunter Ace on Team Nordavind coming in third at the moment in terms of points, and it's not just himself that's been doing that, his teammates. NTR in particular putting it.
Sports are looking to see if they can dabble into Hearthstone. We saw Sentinels kind of step in very recently. Reciprocity is also thinking about getting involved. So if you're a player and that wants to, think about getting sponsored, definitely put yourself out there, and a good performance, getting a spot in championships is a fantastic step on your resume, or stamp rather, on your resume, to potentially get that very elusive Hearthstone professional career.
Because that's the kind of the unsung benefit of going well in the playoffs, I suppose.
And if you can't, well, there's always another spot on the casting desk, I suppose. Yeah, so if you can't play, you can cast. And if you can't play or cast, you can make snarky comments on the internet.
I'm good at that, at least.
All right, here we go. Thank you for being patient as we were getting set up. Moyen Sinto. This is definitely going to be a more fast-paced matchup. We're not necessarily going to have the Azleen or crazy mirror matches that we saw in some of the other top finishes.
Yeah.
Now, Token Druid versus Zoo Warlock with doubling Imp and Soul Infusion. This matchup is going to be whether or not Token Druid can play defense for long enough to swing the board. And with cards like Whispering Woods and Spreading Plague, going to be really important to control the board. Moyen's going to get off to a very fast start with this doubling Imp at 4/4. So this is definitely a little bit of a rough start here for Sinto.
Yeah, not what he wants to see at all. Like you said, he needs to play a little bit defensive at first, but then that's where the version of Token Druid really starts to differentiate itself from the Malagos or Togwaggle variants, in that if there's an even board state and things kind of stagnate for a couple turns, the Token Druid takes such big advantage of that, because they have cards like Power of the Wild, Savage Roar, and Branching Path that mean they can get these sneaky lethals in situations where you don't even think they are getting close to it. They always pull it out of the bag somehow.
Yeah, and Sinto with an aggressive Whispering Woods, trying to see if he can get ahead of the board with Savage Roar, just stabilizing. And if he can force Zoo Warlock to reset, catch his breath, stall until he can get to Ultimate Infestation, he is going to be cooking. I actually really like this preemptive attack as well. Assuming your opponent doesn't have Fungal Enchanter, you're in a really good spot to utilize this Nourish into hero power.
And even if it doesn't work out, the thing you're afraid of here isn't losing health, it's losing board control. That's how you lose this matchup. Because Sintolol still has all the armor gain cards like Open Summons, Branching Path, Malfurion, Ultimate Infestation, the list goes on and on.
Right. One of the things that people don't really talk too much about, but is a very relevant factor in a lot of these games that we've been seeing, is Token Druid still retains a lot of its armor gain capabilities. We often talk about how Druid's a class that's basically the best healing class, as well as one of the best burst classes and board control classes, best ramping class as well.
It's also one of the best winning classes.
It's also one of the best winning classes. You know what
really
it's
good
not
at winning.
good at, though?
What?
Losing.
Oh, yeah, that is its one weakness.
That is its one weakness. Very fatal, if you ask me. All jokes aside, I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, you can definitely, you can just take hits.
Yeah.
As Druid. You have Spreading Plague, you have Malfurion, even just having Branching Paths in really bad scenarios. yeah, don't be afraid to get a little down and dirty and take a little punch here and there.
I really agree with that point. I think when I was trying to learn this token druid, that was actually the biggest mistake I was making, is I was playing too defensively. I wasn't taking the hits, because once you start to learn the specific breakpoints of decks in terms of what burst they can do, you start to realize the risks you could take. For example, often 9 damage against Zoo because they go Soulfire Doomguard to try and kill you off. If you can just make those plays where you tank the hit so you can go for Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest, and then fight back next turn and regain the armor then, that's when the really, really clever plays start to come forward with this deck.
Why do you fall?
See Moyen trying to isolate the Serenite Chain Gang to get the big buffs. And it is going to be one of the most important swings on the board, assuming he doesn't win straight up with his Soulfire from hand. And Sinto does have these Oaken summons to gain back some life, but it doesn't seem like he has any taunt minions, just the Violet Teacher.
Yeah, and this is really his only play. He sees that he's dead on board if he doesn't armor up on this turn. So the Oaken Summons is all he's got, and then ramping up to the Ultimate Infestation, hoping that that will somehow save him is, I think, his best shot. Or praying that he gets a Spreading Plague off of the top.
Right. So with 9 on the board plus 4 from the Soulfire is 13. Not quite. Very close, though.
Yeah. Moyen set this play up perfectly, making himself a little bit weaker, it's worth saying, to Spreading Plague last turn by not buffing up his Voidwalker right now. But the benefit if Sintolol didn't have that is so apparent right now. 2 4/5s thrown down on the board. UI doesn't even come close to saving him.
Right. You can set up for the best case scenario is your opponent has Ultimate Station. Just kill him anyways.
Whoa!
Spreading Plague off the top.
Look at Sinto's face.
Yeah, Sinto, one of the more very honest and candid players you'll ever meet. He kind of just talks about like, man, that was just the best draw for me. That's kind of sick, you know? And this is brutal for Moyen. He just gained, what, 25 life? It is kind of funny with the interaction of Violet Teacher and how it ends up summoning an extra 1/1, which is usually very good.
Yeah.
Not in this scenario.
Cry me a river. I think you're still pretty happy with 6 mana, 25 health worth of taunts.
I certainly. There is a Soulfire potential lethal
That's true.
setup for Moyen.
Yeah, even then it's only a 50%, but I think if that was the situation, Moyen would definitely take that chance.
Now, here's the thing, with this Spreading Plague, there's also the very dangerous proposition of just losing to a counter swing. A single Savage Roar could just hypothetically end the game.
And this is what I was talking about. These stale board states where both players have a lot on board, Token Druid wins those board states. They just push for lethal so surprisingly quickly.
Well, let's count. So, Savage Roar will soak up 3 hits, and then you have 2, 4, 14 plus 10, or 10, so that's...
I think it's just a tad short. I think it might be 6 damage off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a little bit short no matter what, but if he picks up Branching Paths.
That would, I think, be lethal at that point. And now by attacking in, it means even more damage can come through. Moyen wondering, trying to count up the attack totals as quickly as we are as well. Does he have the Soulfire hit just to survive?
Does that change anything? Is that enough? Some quick maths here.
I think it might not be lethal, but for Sintolol here, he can completely mow down this board from his opponent, get in some damage to face, still have taunts in play as well, and I think be in a very happy situation.
Right, so 4 minions can get through, so that's an extra 10 from Savage Roar. 5, yeah, not enough, but definitely going to control the state of the board, kind of like as you were mentioning. And his Ultimate Infestation should be able to pick up more follow-up damage. Very good sequencing for Sinto just to make sure he gets that extra 5/5 due to the token being summoned on the Violet Teacher. Definitely. Easy misstep to forget about.
Even got himself in a situation where none of these minions can attack through to face unless, I don't know, Fungal Mancer's found. It's looking pretty dire for Moyen. Lethal easily represented next turn for Sintolol as well.
Yeah, and this is part of the reason why, you know, and I feel like, I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but we were both a little bit, you know, wondering about whether or not Token Druid should be left up. It is one of the better decks against this lineup. And Token Druid is pretty much just like favored against most of the decks outside the mirror in this matchup and head-to-head. So Moyen could be paying a big price for leaving Token Druid up, while Sinto takes game 1, and he doesn't have to worry about Moyen's Token Druid because he banned that.
Yeah, that was
World Championship because of his last call finishes in 2017. Also was a last call points leader for 2016, but at that time we played the top 8 instead of a guaranteed invite. Let's go to Tempo Mage versus Oddrogue. Tempo Mage is the most important deck to focus on for this entire best of 5 because it is a very poor matchup spread against pretty much all of Moyen's decks. Tempo Mage generally is supposed to be focused on beating the greedy decks. You're talking about Quest Rogue or Death Rattle Hunter, like some of these slower setups. In fact, ironically enough, it looks like, according to statistics, that the best matchup for Tempo Mage is Token Druid, but he banned that.
Yeah, and that sounds like a pretty awful matchup, if I'm honest.
Right, I could be reading this wrong, so again, correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, but does that sound right in concept?
Got to be honest, it doesn't sound right to me. The Tempo Mage, I think, is a pretty bad matchup against the Druid. I'd guess this matchup would actually be one of the better ones for the Tempo Mage. Because yes, the Oddrogue has a fantastic time with that dagger, sweeping up every single minion that the mage can throw down, because when you have a 1-drop, that 1 health plus the dagger cleans up everything the mage can throw down in the early turns. But every single time you choose to use that 2-attack dagger to clear up a minion, you're taking that little bit extra damage, and Sintolol then just chuckles his way through to a victory.
I don't know. According to this, Oddrogues over a course of 3,000 game sample size has a 66.666 repeating, of course.
Of course.
Advantage.
So I was saying...
And that is the best matchup for Moyen in this matchup.
Solid Raven can back me up here. I was saying I think Oddrogue is favored in this matchup, and they laughed me down then.
They giggled at you?
They giggled clean at me.
They dare giggle?
Yeah. Who's giggling now, huh?
Well, I mean, probably Moyen.
You, apparently.
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to say Moyen most likely if it ends up panning out that way. I think it's because of how insane the weapon is for Oddrogue to handle pretty much all the early game threats. A single 1-mana drop that you'll play like Argent Squire or Dire Mole can pretty much answer the entire early game from the Tempo Mage. And Tempo Mage, as great it is as pushing out damage, it needs minions in order to finish the game, because if you just add up all its raw total spells, it almost gets there. So you just need a little bit extra push. Although I will say this is a lot of early game damage.
That's the thing. The dagger coming through, it's meant that Moyen has some pretty nice card advantage and board control as well. But what he has to do is lock down that board control, play his cards very quickly, aggressively, to pull ahead on board, which makes sure he takes no more minion damage for the rest of the game. Because if Moyen can make sure every minion is killed as soon as it's played, then he's in a respectable position. If a single minion sticks for Sintolol for the rest of the game, that's just GG right there, I think.
Yeah, but Sinto is probably already starting to count damage. He has Sorcerer's Apprentice and Cinderstorm to push most likely 4, put his opponent down to 15, and then Fireball only puts you 9 damage away from ending the game. And unless I'm forgetting something, Oddrogue does not have that life gain ability in their deck list, unless they're doing something crazy with Blink Fox, and I don't believe either player has them in their deck list.
I think there's pretty much nothing there to actually gain health, other than giggling to stall the game out from minions. In terms of spells, there is nada.
So I like Cinderstorm because it seems like this is just lining up for the end game.
Yeah.
You know, Tempo Mage is already in its late stages of the game, and to Sinto's credit, or perhaps the Tempo Mage's credit, when you start off with things like Mana Worm on 1, Arcanologist on 2,
you're in a good spot.
That is actually one of the biggest 1-2 punches in Hearthstone.
Yeah.
People talk about Prince Keleseth and Wild Growth, and some of these other cards when you played on curve has the highest win rate. Mana Worm into Arcanologist actually still historically has one of the highest win rates in the game, like high 60s.
Yeah.
It's pretty nuts what you can do with that starting hand.
From Sintolol there, I want to go back to his last turn, where I liked the fact that he was playing very slow there, because I wouldn't have actually hated to see the counter spell come down, if purely to deny the coin. because 4 mana is a very weak turn in any deck, really, because they can't fit in a 3-drop and the hero power on that turn, or play one of their power 5-drops. So denying Giggling Inventor, Vilespine, maybe even just a Fungalmancer for 1 minion, maybe, coming down was worth considering there for Sinto, as it would have meant that Vilespine couldn't have come down, and he's now starting to fall pretty far behind on board.
Frost Nova, Flame Strike, Dragon's Fury, all cards to deal with the board state. The one thing I like about Frost Nova is that it buys you an extra turn, assuming that you're not dead to simply charge damage or the weapon itself. Dragon's Fury is playable right now, but there are a lot of cheap spells in the deck, so I think that's off the table. When you have Shooting Star and Arcane Missiles, it's just absolutely not part of the equation. And then Sinto is wondering if he can get away sneaking in the Kirin Tor Mage and trying to build a board with a free secret here. And Explosive Runes get you very close to finding game-ending damage if you pick up another Fireball.
Yeah, and you can see Sinto kind of wincing at this play. He really, really, really wanted to play that Frost Nova on this turn. But even in the worst case scenario, if his board gets traded away here and something develops for Moyen, he's not in the worst state, probably still gets some damage through to face with the Explosive Runes, and tries to close out with Fireball, and maybe doesn't use Frost Nova to get damage through to face, just uses it to stall out the game, buy himself an extra turn.
So many options.
Moyen doesn't have many great ways to deal with this Explosive Runes. It actually is one of the big saving graces in this matchup, is that pretty much the only minion that will allow you to not take damage is Baku herself. So
not the best play.
Yeah, so you're going to be taking damage, and Moyen's probably extremely afraid of like playing a Fungalmancer here and then taking 4 versus the 3 from Blood Knight and developing a second minion, because most likely he's going to want to trade on the board anyways to stay alive and then utilize Cold Blood to help secure a 2-turn lead.
So if he plays Fungalmancer, takes 4, makes both his minions survive, you're then dead to Fireball, Frostbolt, ping in a couple turns. I think it's probably a little bit too much damage you're taking. At least this way, you push them out of that breakpoint that I mentioned of Fireball, Frostbolt, ping. They now need that little bit extra to close out the game.
Wow.
With the Frost Nova as well, that is a spicy play.
What an opportunity here for Sinto.
It's so close to being so good, because if he does pick Frostbolt, 1 Frostbolt off of the Alunith, that 1 extra health that Moyen gained would stop him from dying on that turn.
Right. But
you got
the upside is so much better if you can stall for damage. And Moyen kind of leaning back here. This was pretty much the ideal steer. Double Fireball. That's it.
That's just game.
And you can see the difference of perhaps needing that 1 extra draw, because Celestial Emissary puts Fireball at 8 damage, and if he pinged, that'd be 10 total. So he'd be a little bit off. That's game.
Sinto just has so many ways to close out this game however he wants. Moyen swings back in his chair. He knows he just got Tempo Mage. Sometimes it happens. Like you said, the Mana Worm, the Arcanologist, it's all too much. And Sintolol is 1 game away. Full champs.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Odd Rogue definitely struggles with this matchup. It loves position and keeping track of all things happening in playoffs and the championships. He has pointed out that 2 Germans have already qualified for the World Championship in Bunny Hopper and Viper. And both of the players that are German on the screen right now, Moyen and Sinto, are also capable of qualifying for the seasonal championship. And you know, what a case it would be for Germany to put themselves on the map. People talk about the coming up countries, but we have to, you know, remember some of the most dominant ones. We're talking about USA. We're talking about Germany, Sweden.
We're talking about the United Kingdom, obviously, as well. Definitely amongst them. Yeah, I think we can both agree it's probably
definitely in the playing category. The casting category, however.
Fair enough.
I can feel the aura from Sato in the back room just like slowly ooze over past the wall onto the set.
Like a miasma of grumpiness.
Yeah. All right. Sinto with no turn 1 play. The Soul Infusion on the Life Drinker is not what you really want to be doing. And I think this is like a really good recognition of what's important. But this is already as bad of a matchup as it gets if you give Odd Rogue an early start. Moyen did not have the 1-drop, but neither did the Zoo Warlock, so I feel like this puts the advantage, once again, back in the odd rogue position.
Yeah, Sinto did have the opportunity to throw down Voodoo Doctor, but I mean, is that really what you want to do in this matchup? But just get munched up by the dagger. I think it's an astute observation for Sintolol that he needs to take it a little bit slower here, try and extend it into the mid-game and dominate his opponent with these strong anti-aggro cards that he's teched in, like Despicable Dreadlord.
Yep, and now with double Light Warden and Voodoo Doctor, that's a pretty reasonable turn 3.
Someone call for the doctor.
Should be able to deal with most of the board. Except this is kind of brutal. Second Hand Clan Thug.
Yeah, this gets very messy because punishing a hand that doesn't do anything early on is obviously vital in this game. And Moyen has that hand. He has the Hench Clan Thugs coming down uncontested on turn 3. And now on turn 4, the dagger's still intact. He can start mopping up this board lickety-split.
One thing that's interesting is Moyen has the ability to also Void Ripper after he trades and keep the Hench Clan Thug on the board, set up the dagger and Hench Clan for the following turn, or in an even better case scenario, have an opportunity to Fungal Mancer. Interesting that he kind of favors a little bit extra health here instead of perhaps trading and then a Hench Clan Thug, but I think he wants to keep his options open in the event that Sinto coins out a 5-mana play so that he could challenge Despicable Dreadlord.
Yeah, and I think what it also accomplishes is the fact that by going for this first, he reduces the attack by 1 on the Voodoo Doctor and the Light Warden that just died, to the point where the Thug survives on board, which it would not have done before.
Right. This is kind of exactly what we're talking about. That Void Ripper play from Moyen now gives him the ability to get outside that Despicable Dreadlord range.
Moyen left with a tough choice of whether he trades here. His opponent just went Coin Fungal Mancer on 1 minion, maybe indicating that he has another one. But even then, if he goes for the trade, you've got 6 damage through to face. He's only played a 2/2, and you follow up with Fungal Mancer Cold Blood of your own and just lock out the game.
And this is one of the criticisms against cards like Soul Infusion. If you happen to just line up on a fairly weak minion, like a full Fungal Mancer, a Life Drinker, a Voodoo Doctor, it's like it doesn't really do that much, and they could feel like dead cards. And we've seen some variants of Zoo out there that sometimes go without the Soul Infusion because of scenarios like this. Hey, a Soulfire comes in the hand, though. That was
big pickup.
A big draw. Nice.
You're just saying. I mean, that's why they're in the deck, right? It's fodder for Soulfire. You just discard them.
Yeah. SI7 Agent, a very powerful swing in this position as well. This is one of Odd Rogue's real big times to shine because it just is able to set up a really powerful board for this Fungal Mancer the following turns. And I feel like as much as Sinto is hanging in there, and that's kind of what he's doing. He's just barely having a grip on this game. Sinto's just conceding straight up because I don't blame him.
That was just pretty much over. It's not even like the Odd Rogues or the Miracle Rogues to an extent where you have cards like
low practice group member Moyen has anything to do with it. Both these Germans trying to get into a good position for the Zoo Warlock mirror here. And just to keep in mind as well, you know, Sinto's weakest deck is already off the board with Tempo Mage. That was a deck that was unfavored against pretty much every deck available for Moyen. So now Sinto just has to get a win with Zoo Warlock, choosing to keep Voidwalker because he values having that turn 1 play. And we've talked about Zoo Warlock a lot, but one of the things that, again, that I like to emphasize is how important it is to test your fundamental understandings about how Hearthstone and maybe just card games work. And one of them is the mulligan. I think people can probably make a case for Zoo being one of the trickier decks to mulligan for because you have so many early game drops that you can sometimes justify keeping. Voidwalker is not exactly one that I always think about. I always think about Flame Imp, Light Warden, Cobalt Librarian. I mean, heck, sometimes you even want to keep like Voodoo Doctor if you have like the big combos to swing with Happy Ghoul. But Voidwalker, isn't it that crucial, you think, to have a 1-drop that you're willing to have like a really weird statted minion to fight board early on?
I think generally with the Zoo, you don't have to have a 1-drop in all the matchups, for example. Slower ones like Druid, you want to be looking for the power swings like Soul Infusion with Doubling Imp or Happy Ghoul, stuff like that. But when you're going first in such a board-based tempo matchup, if Sintolol missed his 1-drop, that would kind of be game over on the spot, even in the worst-case scenario where he's met with a flame, which he has to just Soulfire to keep ahead on board. He's still not in the worst position.
Yeah, not in the worst position. I think it's kind of exactly what you're saying. In this matchup in particular, because of the way trades work with not just Fungalmancer, but also anything that heals, and how Happy Ghoul can kind of swing the board state, any extra buy that you can maintain on board just starts to snowball at a very real point. And then your only real comeback mechanisms are things like either taunts or despicable Dreadlords, or perhaps even something a little bit weird too if you're able to get, like, you know, some Soulfire shenanigans. I think, you know, Sintolol definitely has the right idea here. It's just a really interesting concept to think about, just like what 1-drops are good to keep versus not.
But then if you think about the other 1-drops, they pretty much all have a punish. If you go for Voodoo Doctor or Cobalt Librarian and you're met with an opposing Voidwalker, then you're very sad. If you go for a Light Warden and you're met with a Flame Imp, you're still very sad. There's no 1-drop that just universally dominates the board in this matchup.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, even the buff on the Light Warden.
Pretty much the best draw available for Moyen in this spot here. And the Happy Ghoul on top, the icing on the cake here.
Sintolol knows for the moment he's kind of just been got. His early game has been so fair. Like, he's just played decent minions on turns 1 and 3. Missed a 2-drop. He throws down the concede already.
I don't think he's incorrect in the big picture. I do feel like when you have this much win, I mean, I said that Moyen was 9% chance to win. That might even be under 7.
I think it was probably higher.
It was like even higher than that.
He was so far ahead.
So it's one of those situations where Sinto just felt like, man, even if I get the best cards from my deck, even if I get to choose what I want, I think I lose from that spot.
And now he's got one final chance despite being 2-0 up. And this is a matchup that I would imagine probably influenced your decision to pick or favor players who have this Secret Hunter in their lineup.
Yeah, Secret Hunter is fantastic at picking apart early game boards, but look at Moyen aggressively mulliganing to try to get things like Spellstones. This is not the hand that you're looking for. Snake Trap is fantastic if you have a 1-mana play, but it actually doesn't do anything. A Spellstone pickup, though, is massive for Moyen.
That is absolutely huge, because if Moyen is not winning the board through Crackling Razormaws, Diamols, and Animal Companions, he needs to be pulling it back with power plays. And power plays come in the form of Spellstone and Deathstalker Rexar. Hitting this on turn 5 brings Moyen back into this game that was looking incredibly dire going into turn 3.
That's another secret, but I gotta say, Venom Strike, again, is just a very specific condition. You have to have a minion on board to be attacked. No heal for Sinto, though. That would have been lights out on the other end, right? Sinto would have just been able to play Fungal Enchanter or Voodoo Doll, push 6, and develop his Happy Ghoul for free. But now with Fungal Mancer being picked up, things like Explosive Trap isn't as much of a threat anymore. In fact, it sometimes becomes a liability with Light Wardens on the board.
Oh, but I have to imagine Moyen's going to be picking it here. Even if his opponent goes Coin Fungalmancer, you're still killing 3 minions off the board. You then have a Spellstone that is largely uncontested on the board. And even if they do fight back against it, you got a Snake Trap ready to go.
Moyen, I think this is a bluff setup. I think it's one of those things where it feels like... Is he worried about the Fungalmancer, though? Because he knows his opponent's holding the coin for a while, and Zoo does not like to hold onto the coin for this long.
It's definitely a consideration for him. And maybe he's thinking, if I play the Venom Strike track, my opponent will be so afraid of Explosive Trap that he doesn't attack, which would be the dream.
Right. But if your opponent's holding onto the coin for this long, you kind of anticipate a Fungalmancer in some capacity. So it feels like you want to do it anyways. I personally believe that Moyen's doing this to try and confuse Sinto. Secrets have been a large impact just by the mysterious factor. You're not sure what they're doing, and like Hunter plays, what, 6 secrets in their decks usually these days?
Yeah, and the fact that they're so difficult to trigger, some of them, if you're playing Snipe, happening on play. I've seen a couple of lists with Rat Trap even, where things get really confusing. It's difficult to play all of them, around all of them effectively. But now Sinto only pushing 6 damage to the face on this turn. It's respectable, but not game-winningly good quite yet. And up against the might of 12 worth of stats. 4 wolves coming down for Moyen. It's going to be an uphill climb for Sinto.
Soul Infusion. But with no heal, he can't get that Serenade Chain Gang out. Life tap. Dreadlord is not it, and it looks like the Light Warden train is going to stop. Another big problem is that Secret Hunter is so good at turning the corner, they can themselves can push out a ton of damage.
Sintolol realizing he has to play aggressive, force his opponent to trade and hope that he can wrestle back forward, or maybe sneak a surprise lethal with a Leroy or a Soulfire off the top.
12 damage, 14 with Houndmaster. He can even set up a Venom Strike trap to improve his board. He can take a pretty good value trade with the 5/5. And then it's up to him if he wants to even push damage and threaten the Zoo Warlock. Because he's pushing 9, and Zoo Warlock will most likely tap, or if you shut off their ability to hero power, then you just have to pretty much go card for card.
Yeah, I think you want to play very quick here for Moyen. You want to close out the game next turn if possible, because it's not actually a guarantee that now you've stabilized that you are going to outvalue the Zoo. I think there's a good chance they tap into Fungal Mancers, Despicable Dreadlords, what have you else, and they will just outvalue you on the board.
I moves quickly.
I don't know. I think with the freezing trap in play, there's no way you're dying on this turn. You may as well go aggressive and try and close things out.
Yeah, I think that's probably because freezing trap just does not ever seem good against Happy Ghoul, just because you can get it back for free anyways.
I mean, he's shown he doesn't have healing right now. He'd have to tap into it, which is far from a certainty.
Sinto sets up the best possible Serenade Chain Gang play, but on turn 6, that's only about average given the state of the board. And Moyen has a lot of good draws in this position to close out the game.
Ooh, finding an animal companion. If he could hit a Leok off of that, maybe even just a Huffer to push that little bit of extra damage, lock down the board control. That's going to be pretty important in this situation. But does he go for it? The Subject 9, it's probably too slow. I think you want to make the quick plays here.
Yeah, I think pretty much playing the other cards in your hand would be really good to consider, because even Misha means that you're sort of defended a little bit in case your opponent just has like Soulfire and a Leroy.
Yeah.
You know, Sinto has a fairly aggressive version of the Zoo with that Leroy instead of a second Bloodline. Not the ideal one, but not the worst case scenario here for the Hunter. And with a third secret available, this just makes it so complicated. There's so many secrets to account for.
So much damage pushing face here. Sintolol has to clear up the board right now, which I guess he could try and do with Despicable Dreadlord. It does take care of the snakes in the snake trap, which he will be definitely certain is there at this point.
Sinto super afraid of dying here.
Yeah, just stodging up the board, getting those taunts in play and praying that there is no kind of lethal, but Subject 9 for the refill.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be very dramatic with secrets and packages. Just the fact that he can keep building the board, and this second Secret Keeper ends up being really nice pickup here on the draw. Sinto concedes the reverse sweep from Moyen over the Zoo Warlock. And Moyen's gamble of a lineup here, able to pay off as Sinto, with excellent sportsmanship, walks over and gives fellow German player Moyen